Greetings and welcome to another Fate Grand Order video. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 very specific low star servants, that is 1 to 3 stars, that most people ignore but that are actually well worth your time in leveling up, increasing their skills, and leveling up their noble phantasm. As well as learning how to use them, because a couple of them are technically glass cannons, and you know what to say about glass once it shatters, or maybe not. So anyway, let's go onto the team and show you who I'm talking about, shall we? And these are the 5 servants I was talking about: Arash, Lubu, Robin Hood, akamaru, and Uriale. Now all 5 of these are generally ignored except for akamaru and Uriale. Anybody that's investigated, read online, or tried out many different servants knows how strong those 2 can be. But let's start at the beginning, at the bottom of the list, with Arash, shall we? Now, Arash is at the very bottom of the list for 2 reasons. 1, he is the only 1 star, and 2, his noble phantasm is actually an AoE. That makes it innately weaker than a single target. However, just because he's at the bottom of the list does not make him any less useful. So let's explain why. So right off the bat, because he is a 1-star servant, it's very easy to get 5 copies of him. And that means it's very easy to get his noble phantasm all the way up to level 5. Meaning it'll be even more powerful. And as you can see, as per the little gray icon next to it where it says NP, he has a interlude which increases the strength of his noble phantasm. So that's also good. Now let's take a look at his skills. The only important one here, if we're perfectly honest, is the 3rd skill, Arrow Construction. Now this will increase his MP charge from, I believe, 10 to 30% depending on the level. At level 10, which is how I have it right now, it increases it by 30%. And that is actually what is very important about him. If you give him either kaleidoscope or imaginary element that is limit broken, he can launch his noble phantasm on the very first turn. And that's actually very good because that is why you're bringing him along. Now, unfortunately, because it is an AoE noble phantasm, it isn't as strong as we wish it could be. However, if you take him along with a little bit of help, like let's say a support like Waver, Elizabeth, or Merlin, and you boost him up even further by using your Mystic Code, that is your character's outfit, then he can actually deal quite a significant amount of damage in the right conditions. So let's take a look at his noble phantasm. Obviously at level 5, Anti-Army deals significant damage to all enemies and apply death to yourself. Yes. He literally kills himself when he shoots this, and if you've gone through the Camelot story arc, or chapter, then you know exactly why. But anyway, let's talk about it. Now, normally, when you use a noble phantasm, having it kill the servant is not exactly what you're looking for. However, in this case, it's actually useful because it's actually relatively hard for him to charge his noble phantasm and stay alive at the same time. He only has around 7,000 HP, I believe. Yes, he does. Which means against something that's actually dangerous, he probably won't live long. However, in this case, him dying to his noble phantasm is not a bad thing. That's because as soon as he launches it, he'll go down to 0, and he dies, he leaves the battlefield, and then our next servant can come in and launch their noble phantasm. And that's exactly how you use him. He is a key piece in being able to try and farm great knight medals outside of events. Obviously, this is done in the final free quest of Camelot. So why don't I show you how strong he can actually be with the proper support, shall we? So yeah, as you just saw, he was able to almost take out both of the Holy Knights in the first wave, dealing 70,000 damage to both of them. Now this did require that 1, he had a attack up buff from my Mystic Code. He also had I believe a strength up buff from my Elizabeth, which increased his Buster Card effectiveness as well as everyone else. And outside of that, it was against sabers, obviously, which meant his damage was, I think, is doubled. If not augmented by 50%, I think it's doubled. So that upped it to what it was that you saw. And that was very important because farming that specific stage for Great Knight medals is actually pretty tough. Especially when you see that those knights have 70,000, Some of them can even gain through, what's it called, ignore evasion, and they can actually hit pretty hard when they start critting, so that's annoying. So he has a very important part in farming that scenario. So yeah, Rush is, while being a level 1 servant, it's actually pretty useful. Even outside of farming Great Knight medals, I found myself using him when farming daily embers, just because he makes it so easy to clear one wave of hand enemies, which are the ones that drop the embers. So yeah, not a bad servant considering what he is, isn't he? Now let's move on to the second one, shall we? Now the second servant I'm going to talk about is Lubu Fengxian, how's that pronounced? Anyway, this guy is one of those many 3-star or lower berserkers that are all over the place doing the friend and normal summons, and we tend to ignore them for a good reason, because most of us have Heracles or Lancelot or even Tamamo Cat, Kintoki. Basically, there are many other servants out there that are better than him at staying alive to be able to deal their damage. However, Lubu has something none of those other ones have. Well, maybe Kintoki has, but he's very time limited, so yeah. And that is a skill that increases his Noble Phantasm damage to insane amounts. That, and put together with the fact that he's a berserker, means he'll be doing maximum damage to everybody. Actually, scratch that, I do believe very far off in the future we're going to get the Foreigner class, and I do believe they're specifically designed to take down berserkers, in that they actually take half damage from berserkers and deal double damage to them. I think it's them. Could also be alter egos, but I'm not really sure. Anyway, so let's go down to his skill. So as you can see, he has 2 skills that increases damage. First, Valor rank B at level 10, which I obviously ranked up. Now this is the same skill that Heracles has at A+. I believe Heracles is the highest. Heracles goes all the way up to 27%. Lubu here I think only goes to 20. So that's the first part. Now the second part is the final skill there, Chaotic Villain A. Now you need to go through his strengthening quest to get this skill. However, as you can see, increase MP strength and critical star gather rate, but it comes with the demerit that it reduces everybody's defense by 20% for 2 turns. Now that sounds kinda iffy if we're completely honest, but it's not as bad as you think. As I'm showing you right here, what you are gaining from using the skill is absolutely worth it. First, his attack up is 9 to 27%, which is very good. Then his debuff resist goes from 18 to 36, which is honestly kind of mesh. And the cooldown is, let's see, 5 turns at rank 10. So that is, hold on, that's for the first one. Yes, indeed. So that's not bad. Being able to increase your attack for 3 turns, 75 turns, that is not bad for a skill, isn't it? However, let's go look at Chaotic Villain. Where are you? Okay, here we go. Ruthless Warrior of the Turbulent Times, or in this case, Chaotic Villain. The Japanese one sounds a lot better. Anyway, this is the most important one because it increases his MP damage from 20 to 30%. Not only that, but it comes with the insane effect of increasing his critical star absorption rate by 3,000. Yes, you heard right, 3,000. That means that pretty much every critical star you have accumulated will go to him. So if you are able to plan this correctly and put it together with somebody that can generate a lot of critical stars, and he gets a Buster Heroic Chain with his Noble Phantasm, he can deal a tremendous amount of damage. How high damage? Well, why don't I actually show you how much damage he can actually do, shall we? So yeah, what you just saw was him dealing 90,000 damage to a assassin hand, I believe. But anyway, that basically lets you see how much of a cannon he actually is. Instead of a cannon, he's more of like a nuclear missile there. Being able to deal 90,000 damage to pretty much anyone on his own is powerful enough. Now imagine if you couple that with, say, a attack up from Waver, a Buster Up effectiveness from Helena, or even a Buster Up effectiveness from either Shakespeare or Merlin in the future, and you can start seeing him hit for over 100,000. That for a 3-star is not bad. Now the only bad part about him is that being a Berserker, Even being a Berserk, actually, outside of his Noble Phantasm, he doesn't deal that much damage. It's only around the 6s, which really isn't good, considering Heracles goes from 10,000 upwards. But yeah, when it comes to being a one-time nuker there, or if you can charge him up multiple times, definitely not a bad servant to level up, especially if you're going up against a single target that you want to take down very quickly. So, on to our third servant. And our third servant here is the Prince of Thieves himself, Robin Hood. Now, when you look at him, he doesn't have anything that you usually want on your team. If you go down to his skills, you can see he has Sabotage, which is decrease attack and inflict poison. Decrease attack stats are usually less than 10% or around 10% for the maximum rarity ones. And Golden Roll only applies to him so that he can actually launch his Noble Phantasm. And making, obviously, a dodge with a critical star generation. I think I haven't unlocked it. But anyway, the important part here is not any of that, but rather his Noble Phantasm. As you can see, deals significant special attack damage to a poisoned enemy. So now that poisoning for skill makes sense, it poisoned the opponents. And the nice thing about that skill is that at level 10, it'll have a 5-turn cooldown, which is not bad. So how much special attack damage are we talking about? Well, why don't I actually just show you how much damage this little Prince of Thieves can actually do to a target. So what you just saw was him dealing 80,000 damage to a Shadow Gawain. And that Gawain was level 80, so that was a pretty high defense that he had. So yeah, being able to deal 80,000 damage to a generally any saber enemy is definitely not bad. Now, when you consider he has a 2 arts deck and 1 buster, you're generally going to focus on charging up his Noble Phantasm and using that. The only downside about having an Arts Noble Phantasm is that Arts are only the second hardest hitting cards in for a servant, the highest being Buster. However, that is not necessarily a bad thing. That is because we now have a second Archer that lives off of Arts cards. Well, I'm talking about Chloe here. She has a triple Arts deck and a Arts Noble Phantasm. Now, if only we could find a third Arts Archer, this could be a Arts Archer team that could work very, very well. So why don't we keep looking at the next servant and see what I'm talking about, or maybe not. Okay, so here we have the most loyal of samurais and lover of headpats, Akamaru. Now, she was the first actual rider that I managed to get, and that's why she's at Bond level 10. And during all that time, I was actually very impressed with what she was able to do. Not only are her main skills very party friendly actually, increasing MP gain for everybody and increasing attack for everybody, but her Noble Phantasm would hit particularly hard, and I wasn't very sure why. That is, until I decided to go investigate and figure out why everything was like it was. So what I'm showing you right now is her Noble Phantasm damage after her interlude. And as you can see, because it's so easy to get 5 copies of her, it is always doing 2,400% of her attack damage. That is definitely not bad, right? The only downside is that it's a quick Noble Phantasm, and that lowers its damage quite a bit. But other than that, she also gets a critical shot generation rate, which is really not that good on her, unfortunately. She only hits twice with her arts and quick arts, so that's a little disappointing. However, what's not disappointing is her Noble Phantasm damage. Why don't I show you what I'm talking about, shall we? This is just going to be versus a Berserker hand for maximum damage. So let's see what she can do, shall we? So yes, what you just saw there was Akamaru hitting for over 100,000 on that hand. And that's with only her attack up ability, and I only have it at level 4. Now imagine if you gave her Helena's quick card up ability, and you gave her Waver's attack up and damage up ability, and then lowered the enemy's defense, and now you're taking very significant damage. And this is what makes her such a good servant. Not only is she generally strong when it comes to her Noble Phantasm in general, but all of the Singularity final bosses are generally weak to her for some odd reason. If you don't know who I'm talking about, I don't want to spoil the story so far, so go play it. But whenever you are fighting something very big with a lot of eyes, she is your go-to servant, because not only does she have survivability, she will benefit everyone else. Now, she is not number 1, and that means the number 1 servant must deal even more damage under certain circumstances, right? And you would be correct. So let's go take a look at the golden girl of this category, shall we? And here she is, the idol goddess Ariale, the golden girl of the category, mostly because she is invaluable during the Camelot Singularity. If you have her and used her during Camelot, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So for those of you who don't know, she is only a 3-star servant and her attack isn't particularly high, even though her on mine it is, I believe, 1,000 over what it should be because I did give her 10 attack foes. However, let's take a look at her skills, because right off the bat you can see she is very useful under certain situations. So first skill, Vampirism C, medium chance to decrease specific enemy's charge and increase your own. Now I believe this Vampirism goes all the way up to 90% from 50 in the chance that it can decrease the target's Noble Phantasm charge, which is very good during very difficult fights. She was crucial and in helping control Gawain during Camelot. He was a pain in the butt. Then her second skill, Siren Song, is a charm on a male enemy for 1 turn. I believe this goes from 50 to 100% depending on the level. However, that 100% does not guarantee it because every servant has an innate amount of debuff resistance. So it may not always work, but most of the time it does. And lastly, the Whim of the Goddess A requires you to go through her strengthening quest, but it is well worth the time. Whim of the Goddess will increase her arts card's effectiveness by between 20 and 50%. I don't know of any other servant that has a bonus to their main card by that much. Now, let's see, where are her cards? They're down here. Anyway, let's take a look at her Noble Phantasm. As you can see, it deals significant special attack damage to a single male enemy and high chance to apply charm status male only, and chance to increase chance increases with total charge and decrease attack by 3% for 3 turns. So as you can see, if you decide to use her against a male saber, like say in Camelot against the Knights of the Round, she will absolutely destroy him, not only with her Noble Phantasm, but also with the rest of her skills. So how strong is she? Well, why don't I show you how much of a pain in the butt she is to the Knights of the Round, huh? So yeah, that was 134,000 damage on Shadow Gawain with only her arts buff to empower her. If that isn't very nice damage on very specific circumstances, I don't know what is. So how do you do that much damage? Well, it's because Gawain is a saber, he's a male, and she essentially hates all males, and if they're sabers, even more. So this is the third arts-based archer I was telling you about, as you can see. She also has 2 arts cards in her deck. So she is combine her with Robin, who is also an arts archer, and Chloe, who is probably the most powerful single target 4-star archer in the game, who's also based on arts, and suddenly they are firing off their Noble Phantasm left and right. Unfortunately, they're all single target, but if you're up against one very important dude, then yeah, they're gonna get destroyed. And that is why she is the number 1 servant of 3 stars or less that I would recommend you level up. The amount of damage that she will do to the Knights of the Round during the Camelot Saga is so massive, and the fact that she can help control them is so strong that not using her during Camelot is doing yourself a disservice. So yeah, she is without a doubt the number 1 spot on this list. So there you go, 5 servants that are 3 stars or lower that I would absolutely recommend leveling up. Even if they are only for very specific circumstances, the amount of damage they can do or the amount of wave clear that they can bring is without a doubt worth bringing them along, or at least considering them. Now, if you are running into the problem that I'm currently, where trying to run all your 4 and 5-star servants with 5-star craft instances is not, well, you don't really have that much space in your team, then bringing along any of these is well worth the consideration. Especially Arash. I find myself using them quite a bit often, especially for wave clear. So there you go. These 5 servants are probably waiting for you on your, in your Chaldea list, so give them a little bit of love. Now, with all that said and done, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.